It all started on a Friday evening when the soft hum of excitement filled the air. Rachel had always been a bit of an introvert, preferring cozy nights with a book or a quiet dinner with friends. But when her best friend, Emily, invited her to a party at one of the city's most exclusive nightclubs, she couldn't resist. Emily had been pushing her to get out of her shell for months, and this time, Rachel decided to go for it. "Come on, it's just one night." "You deserve to have fun," Emily urged, practically begging over the phone. Rachel had been on the fence for a while, but she finally relented. After all, what could go wrong? When the night came, Rachel found herself in front of a sleek black building with pulsing lights emanating from the windows. The sound of bass thumped through her chest as she approached the door, heart racing with a mix of nerves and curiosity. Emily was already inside, and Rachel made her way past the bouncers and into the club. The atmosphere inside was electric. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and alcohol. Neon lights flickered above, casting a rainbow of colors across the dance floor. People were swaying to the beat, laughing and chatting in small groups. Rachel had never been much of a party-goer, but something about the place felt almost surreal. She spotted Emily immediately, waving enthusiastically from the bar. "You're here," Emily grinned, pulling her into a hug. "I knew you'd come." Rachel smiled, her anxiety slowly melting away as she settled into the bustling environment. They ordered drinks, and Emily introduced her to a few of her friends. The evening passed in a blur of laughter and clinking glasses. For the first time in months, Rachel felt like she was truly letting go. But as the night wore on, something began to shift in the air. The laughter grew louder, the music more intense, and the people around her started to feel like they were from another world. Rachel noticed a man standing by the edge of the dance floor, watching her intently. He was tall, dressed in a sharp black suit, his eyes dark and unreadable. There was something unnervingly captivating about him. Their eyes met for a split second, and for some reason, Rachel felt an unsettling chill run down her spine. "Who's that guy?" she asked Emily, trying to keep her voice casual. "Don't worry about him," Emily laughed. "He's just a regular, rich businessman. Always here, never bothering anyone. But he's got this air about him, doesn't he?" Rachel couldn't look away from him. Something in his gaze felt like he knew her. It was like he was waiting for her to notice him. But before she could turn her attention back to her drink, Emily pulled her back into the conversation. The rest of the night was a whirlwind of dancing, drinks, and more mingling. The man remained a shadow in the background, his eyes never straying too far from Rachel. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Rachel felt a strange tension building in her chest, an instinct that told her something was wrong, though she couldn't put her finger on it. Finally, Emily convinced her to go dance. Rachel hesitated at first, but Emily's infectious energy pulled her onto the floor. The music seemed louder now, almost deafening, and the lights brighter. She let herself get lost in the rhythm, the pounding beats making her feel lighter, freer. But as the night wore on, she began to feel a growing sense of disorientation. The room seemed to spin, the faces around her blurred. Before she could make sense of it, her vision blurred and the floor beneath her feet tilted. Her body felt heavy, as if the world around her was slipping away. The last thing she remembered was the man's eyes, his gaze locked onto her as if he were watching her fall into darkness. When Rachel woke up, it was to the soft rustling of leaves. Her head ached and her limbs felt stiff. She groaned and tried to sit up, but the ground beneath her was unfamiliar. The smell of damp earth mixed with the scent of wood and something else, something metallic. She blinked, trying to adjust her blurry vision. Where was she? Her surroundings were dimly lit by the light of a crescent moon. Tall trees surrounded her in a dense forest, casting long shadows that made her skin crawl. Panic set in as she realized she was completely alone. The sounds of the nightclub, the laughter, the music, Everything from the night before had faded into an eerie silence. Rachel shot up to her feet, her heart racing. She looked around, trying to make sense of where she was, but nothing looked familiar. There were no streetlights, no signs of civilization, just trees, darkness, and the chilling silence of the woods. She reached into her pocket only to find her phone missing. Her mind raced and the fear started to creep in. What? What happened? Whispered to herself. Her head throbbed as flashes of the night before came back to her. The man, his gaze, the strange feeling of being watched, but nothing made sense. How had she ended up here? And why couldn't she remember anything after she had seen him looking at her? Rachel took a few tentative steps forward, trying to stay calm, but the forest felt suffocating. Every snap of a twig beneath her feet made her jump. Her breaths quickened, panic slowly taking hold. Suddenly, she heard a sound. A rustling from the trees. She froze, heart pounding in her chest, and turned around, her eyes scanning the darkness. Was it the man from the club? Had he followed her here? The rustling grew louder, and then a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was the man. Rachel's heart skipped a beat and a chill ran down her spine. He was standing just a few feet away, his face expressionless, his eyes locked onto hers. "You've been waiting for me," he said, his voice low, almost hypnotic. Rachel couldn't speak. She couldn't move. All she could do was stare at him, her mind racing. How had he found her? Why was he here? And most importantly, what did he want? Rachel's mind was spinning. She wanted to run, scream, to do anything to break the suffocating silence around her, but her body wouldn't respond. She could only stand there, frozen, as the man approached her slowly. His steps were deliberate, calculated, as if he knew she couldn't escape. You're not real," she whispered, though the words barely made sense to her own ears. Everything about him felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The man stopped just a few feet away, his dark eyes never leaving hers. "I am real, Rachel, and so are you." The air around them seemed to grow colder, as if the night itself was holding its breath. He extended a hand toward her, and for a moment she thought he was going to hurt her. But there was something in his gaze, something that made her hesitate. She glanced down at his hand, then back into his eyes. They were intense but not threatening, almost familiar. "You've been here before," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You just don't remember yet." Rachel shook her head, trying to make sense of his words. No, I haven't. I've never been here. Where am I? Why am I here? And why? Why are you acting like you know me?" His lips curled into a slight smile, but it was cold, distant. "You really don't remember? Interesting." Rachel's stomach churned. The feeling of déjà vu was overwhelming now. She tried to take a step back, but the ground beneath her feet was uneven and she stumbled. The man reached out quickly, grabbing her arm to steady her. "Don't worry, Rachel, you're safe with me," he said, his tone softer this time, almost reassuring. She jerked her arm away, her heart pounding in her chest. "I don't want to be safe with you. I want to go home." The man's face seemed to harden for a moment. His eyes flashed with something unreadable, but then he exhaled, a slight sigh escaping his lips. "Home. You want to go home, but you can't yet, not until you remember." "Remember what?" Rachel demanded, her voice trembling with frustration. "The truth." Rachel stood there, confused, her mind racing to process his cryptic words. What truth? What was he talking about? "Look," the man said, taking a step back, giving her space. "I know this is overwhelming. Trust me, I know. But you have to remember, it's the only way you'll get out of this place." "Out of what place?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where am I? This is impossible." The man looked at her with sympathy, though it felt like there was more than just pity in his eyes. There was an understanding. "You're not in a place, Rachel. You're in between. In the space where everything and nothing exist at once." Rachel blinked, her head spinning even faster. "What are you talking about?" "Just tell me what's going on." He took a deep breath and then spoke slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. "This isn't the first time we've met. In fact, you and I have crossed paths many times before. You just don't remember it, not yet." Rachel felt like the ground beneath her was slipping away. What do you mean? Are you saying we've met? In another life, the man nodded. Yes, this is the cycle, Rachel, and you're stuck in it, but there's a way out. You just have to face what's been hidden from you. Rachel felt a cold knot form in her stomach. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. How could she have been trapped in some sort of cycle she didn't remember? And why did this man, this stranger, seem so familiar? You don't have to believe me, he said, his voice quiet now. But it will make sense soon. In time, you'll remember everything. And when you do, you'll understand why we are here. Rachel wanted to scream, to run as far away as possible, but something deep inside her told her she couldn't leave. Not yet, not until she understood what was going on. You know, Rachel, the truth is that you're here because you made a choice, but you don't remember the consequences of that choice. Not yet. Her breath caught in her throat. What choice? What do you mean? He smiled then, and for the first time his expression wasn't cold or distant. There was warmth in it, like a glimmer of something from the past, a memory Rachel couldn't quite grasp. You'll find out soon enough, he said, turning to walk away. No, wait, Rachel shouted, taking a step forward. Tell me what's going on, please. But he didn't turn around. He just walked deeper into the forest, his figure melting into the shadows as if he were a part of the night itself. Rachel was left standing there, her heart pounding in her chest, fear and confusion gripping her tightly. She wanted answers. She needed to know what was happening, what choice she had made, and why this man seemed to know everything about her. But as she stood there, the air around her seemed to shift. The night became even darker, the sounds of the forest more ominous, and then just as quickly as it had appeared, the man was gone. Where am I? She whispered to the empty woods. There was no answer, only the chilling sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Rachel felt her pulse quicken as the last words of the man echoed in her mind. You'll find out soon enough. His voice lingered like a shadow, surrounding her, pulling her deeper into a world she could not understand. Every step she took seemed to stretch the boundaries of her reality, as if the forest itself was folding in on her. She stood there in the cold, unable to move, as a strange pressure pressed against her chest. Her mind was racing, desperate to make sense of what had just happened. Her thoughts swirled in a vortex of confusion. This man, was he telling the truth? Had they met before? And if so, why couldn't she remember? Rachel's gaze wandered down to her trembling hands. The icy wind bit at her skin, but it wasn't the cold that made her feel numb. It was the sheer weight of the mystery hanging over her. What choice had she made? What was the truth that he had mentioned? Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. Rachel. She froze, her body locking in place, her breath caught in her throat. Rachel, it's time. The voice was faint, almost a whisper, but it was unmistakable. The man. He was here again, or at least his voice was. Who are you? She called out, her voice trembling in the stillness. Why are you doing this to me? The only response was the rustling of the trees. The wind howled through the branches, but there was no one there. Her heart raced as she looked around, desperately searching for any sign of the mysterious figure who had left her standing alone in the woods. But then, just as suddenly as the voice had appeared, a faint light began to flicker in the distance. It was dim at first, barely visible through the thick trees, but it pulsed with an eerie rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Rachel took a cautious step forward, drawn to the light. She didn't know why, but she felt compelled to follow it. There was no logical reason for her to go further into the darkness, but her legs moved as if controlled by something outside of herself. With every step she took, the air grew thicker, the shadows deeper. The trees seemed to close in around her, their twisted branches stretching out like fingers trying to pull her in. But the light was still there, a beacon in the distance, promising answers, or at least the truth. As she walked, her mind kept replaying the man's words. You made a choice. But she couldn't remember making any choice. Not one that had brought her here, at least. The closer she got to the light, the more familiar it seemed. But where had she seen it before? She tried to recall anything from the past that could explain this strange sense of déjà vu, but nothing came to mind. It was as if her memory had been wiped clean. When Rachel finally reached the light, she gasped. In front of her stood a tall, ancient-looking mirror, its surface glowing faintly with a soft blue light. The edges were jagged, like they had been shattered and then hastily put back together. The reflection in the mirror wasn't her own. It was a distorted, ghostly image of a woman, her face blurry, her eyes hollow, as though the reflection were only half alive. Rachel stepped forward, mesmerized. The air felt heavier now, thick with an energy she couldn't explain. The woman in the mirror, was it her? Was that how she looked before? Without thinking, Rachel reached out to touch the mirror. As her fingers grazed the cold surface, a shock of electricity shot through her, and her vision went black. When Rachel's vision returned, she found herself no longer in the forest. Instead, she was lying on a cold, stone floor, her body aching as if she had been dragged for miles. The air was damp, and a strange scent of mildew and dust filled her nostrils. She blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to her surroundings. Her heart raced as she sat up, taking in the dimly lit room. It was a small, narrow chamber, its walls covered in what appeared to be old, weathered tapestries. Strange symbols and images were etched into the stone, their meaning completely foreign to her. The room felt like it was stuck in time, as though it hadn't been touched by the outside world in centuries. Panic bubbled up inside her chest. "What is this place?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Just then she heard footsteps approaching. The heavy sound echoed through the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. Rachel's breath hitched in her throat. She wasn't alone. Something was coming for her. The door to the room creaked open and a figure stepped inside. It was the man, the one who had been haunting her thoughts, whose voice had followed her through the darkness. His face was obscured by a hood, but his presence was unmistakable. He was tall, imposing, and as he stepped closer, the air around him seemed to thrum with power. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I wasn't sure if you would make it this far." Rachel stood up, taking an instinctive step back. Her heart was pounding in her chest, her mind scrambling for some explanation, some way to make sense of what was happening. "What is this place? Who are you?" The man pulled back his hood, revealing a face she knew but could hardly recognize. His features were sharp, almost otherworldly, and his eyes were cold, calculating. He smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was a smile of someone who knew secrets that no one else could ever understand. "You don't remember, do you?" he said softly, his eyes scanning her face. "You were never supposed to remember, but it's time now, Rachel, time to wake up." Rachel's chest tightened. "Wake up? What do you mean? Who are you?" The man stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You don't know me yet, but I know you. I've known you for a long time. In fact, you've known me too. You just forgot." "Forgot?" Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "How could I forget you? I've never seen you before in my life." He shook his head, his eyes filled with pity. "You haven't seen me in this life, but you've seen me in others. You've met me in countless lives, in countless forms. I'm the one who has been waiting for you, the one who brought you here." Rachel's mind was reeling. What was he saying? How could any of this be possible? She tried to shake the thoughts from her head, but they only grew stronger, more pressing. The room seemed to spin as if she was caught in a whirlwind of memories that weren't hers, memories of lives she had never lived, of places she had never been. The man took another step closer, his hand reaching out to touch her cheek gently. "You've always been destined to return to this place, to this moment. We've both been waiting for you to remember." "Remember what?" Rachel choked out, her voice breaking. He smiled again, this time with more warmth. "The truth." Suddenly, everything clicked. The mirror, the strange symbols, the feeling of déjà vu, it was all coming together. Rachel realized with a cold shock that the memories she had been trying to suppress were not her own. They were echoes of another life, a life she had lived before, one that had been erased from her mind. She had been here before, in this very room with him. The man's voice broke through her thoughts. "You've been through this before, Rachel, but this time you're different, you're stronger, and this time you can make a choice." "Choice?" Rachel whispered, her mind whirling with the implications of what he was saying. He nodded, his eyes darkening. "Yes, you can choose to live in this world where the truth is finally revealed, or you can leave it all behind and forget again. But once you remember, there's no going back, there's no undoing it." Rachel stared at him, her mind a blur of confusion and fear. "What do you want from me?" The man took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for something monumental. "I want you to remember who you are, the power that you hold, the truth that you were never meant to forget." Rachel took a step back, her legs trembling beneath her. This was all too much. It couldn't be real. None of it could be real. But as the man reached out to her once more, she felt a sudden surge of recognition. His touch was familiar, and something deep inside her stirred, awakening a memory buried long ago. And in that moment, Rachel realized something terrifying. The truth was not just in the mirror. It was in her. Rachel felt a strange pull in her chest as the man's hand came closer. Her mind was fighting against the overwhelming wave of memories that were starting to resurface. Everything about him, every gesture, every word he spoke, felt like pieces of a puzzle she had forgotten. It was both terrifying and comforting at the same time. Her heart raced as she stumbled backward, trying to escape the gravity of his presence. "I don't understand. I don't understand what's happening," she gasped. The man looked at her with a mixture of sadness and patience, as though he had been expecting this reaction. "You will. You just need to trust me. Trust what you're starting to remember." The words echoed in Rachel's mind, and for the first time she realized that everything in her life, the strange dreams, the déjà vu, the nagging feeling that something was missing, had all led her here. She had been running from something for so long, but now, standing face to face with this man, it was undeniable. "I can't trust you," she whispered, shaking her head, though the conviction was starting to falter. "I don't even know you." The man's expression softened, and he reached into his cloak, pulling out an object Rachel hadn't seen before. It was a small pendant, shimmering with a faint blue glow. "You've seen this before, Rachel," he said, holding it out to her. Rachel froze. The pendant looked familiar, so familiar that it made her pulse quicken. She took a hesitant step forward, her hand reaching for it without thinking. As soon as her fingers brushed the cool metal, a surge of images flooded her mind, her past lives, different faces she had worn, different people she had been. It was overwhelming. "I was your protector," the man continued. "In each life I've been with you, waiting for the moment you would remember. You've always been at the heart of something bigger, Rachel." Suddenly, everything snapped into focus. Rachel saw herself in different eras, different faces, different lives, all leading up to this one moment. She had been the key to something she hadn't been able to understand until now. "I was a protector," Rachel breathed, the realization dawning on her. "Yes, you're more powerful than you know," he said softly. "You've always had the ability to alter everything, Rachel, but you've always forgotten. Each time we've erased it so you could live in peace. But now, it's time for you to make a choice." "Choose?" Her voice wavered as she looked at him. "What am I supposed to choose? What if I don't want any of this? What if I don't want to be part of this? This destiny?" The man took a deep breath, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I understand your fear, but know this, you've always had the power to change the world. You've always had the power to rewrite everything. The choice is yours, Rachel." Tears welled up in Rachel's eyes as she looked at him, struggling with the weight of his words. She had always felt different, but she never knew why. Now, standing on the edge of a reality she could barely grasp, she was being told she had the power to change everything, to alter history itself. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, fear, and longing. She could see the road ahead, and yet it felt impossible to take the first step. The life she knew, the friends, the job, the small, familiar world she had built, was all on the verge of being destroyed by the truth. "Will I lose everything if I choose this?" she asked softly, her voice breaking. The man shook his head, his expression tender. "You will lose nothing. You will gain everything. You just have to decide if you are ready to step into who you truly are." Rachel's heart pounded as she looked down at the pendant in her hand. The weight of it felt like 1,000 years of history pressing down on her. Suddenly, the images in her mind cleared, and a voice echoed in her head. It wasn't the man's voice, but her own. A voice from deep within. "I've always known what I was capable of. It's time to stop running." Her hand tightened around the pendant. The decision had already been made. She was ready. "I choose to remember," she whispered. The man smiled, his eyes soft with approval. "Good, it's time." With a deep breath, Rachel stepped forward, the world shifting around her. In that moment, she knew her life would never be the same again. There was no turning back, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready to embrace the truth.